the pandemic, as schools and daycare shut down and the rhythms of life were disrupted, many Americans were confronted with the precarity of our systems of care. Many began to discuss a crisis of care. And while these contemporary questions are important, I want to suggest that the new attention on care offers an opportunity to consider how care labor has a history. As a historian, I encourage us to ponder, how has care labor changed over time? Who does it and why? Who profits from it? Who defends it? And importantly, how have people perceived and organized around care as a site of collective power? By care labor, I mean all the things we do over the course of our lives to sustain ourselves, our families, and our communities daily and intergenerationally. If you cooked a meal today, if you took care of a baby, if you planted a garden, you performed care labor. I am a historian who thinks about how all these things have a history, how they change and are conditioned by society, and how people have made a political case for organizing society around care. I'm also a historian of Appalachia, and it just so happens that Appalachia provides us many opportunities to think about care. My current project turns to early 20th century Appalachia, when thousands of people were pushed out of agriculture and into the new industries, like coal mining in West Virginia, that powered industrial capitalism. By 1909, 176 companies employed a majority of the 70,000 miners in the state, and coal production increased 1,000%. Long hours, low wages, and dangerous working conditions characterized the miners' workdays. Moving from the farm to industrial coal towns also transformed women's care labor. As men worked in the mines, women kept everyone fed, clothed, bathed, and alive. Coal operators, who grew extremely wealthy, built company towns and recruited entire families to live in coal towns because they knew the value of women's labor, even if they did not pay them for it. Women's labor was the necessary foundation for the grueling physical exertion of digging and shoveling coal underground. They tended gardens, fetched water, laundered oily coal dirt out of clothes, cleaned privies, cared for the young and the sick and the men disabled in the mines. Women's care labor grew in importance during a decade of historic labor struggles in West Virginia, known as the Mine Wars. During this period, thousands of Black, white, and immigrant miners went on strike, culminating in the Battle of Blair Mountain in 1921. And it's known as one of the largest labor uprisings in American history. The era of miners' strikes began with the Paint and Cabin Creek strike of 1912 and 1913 in Kanawha County, West Virginia. Thousands of miners laid down their tools and picked up arms. They demanded recognition of their union, fair wages, and a right to civil liberties. One demand had to do with the private security guards, known as the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency. The owners of the coal companies hired these armed guards to protect property, but mostly these guards stalked union organizers, evicted families from their homes, and harassed women and children. As conditions worsened and gunfights broke out between guards and striking miners, the governor of West Virginia called in the National Guard and he declared martial law. The striking miners thought that the governor might protect their rights to free association, but he did not, instead confiscating their guns and having many arrested without due process. The strike lasted for more than a year, and several dozen people, most of them striking miners, would be killed. The episode would come to be known as a war between propertied and working classes of men. But what happens when we take seriously women's experiences and the ways that they continued to take care of people during the strike? There's the story of Mother Jones, the Irish-born militant labor organizer for the United Mine Workers, who trekked through West Virginia and rallied the miners. She offered eulogies at funerals, marched with women and children, and declared that the fight over working people's right to a decent life was a moral struggle. And then there's the hundreds of women whose care labor sustained the strike. While the men organized a union and withheld their own labor, women organized their own care labor in support of this labor uprising. They made the strike possible. They set up the tent colonies where families lived after eviction so that the union miners could continue to pressure the companies into recognize their right to organize. Collectively, they did laundry and cooked, cared for children, sang and danced and played cards. They also faced attacks. Like when a coal operator and armed guards boarded a train called the Bull Moose Special by the coal owners and the Death Train by the miners. It was outfitted with a machine gun. The coal baron told the conductor to drive the train toward the tent colony, Holly Grove, at night, where guards fired at sleeping families. One man was killed and others were injured. The assault infuriated Sarah Blizzard, known as Mother Blizzard. After she and her husband Timothy were evicted twice for labor organizing, she had used her savings from domestic work to buy a small plot of land where she allowed striking workers and their families to pitch tents. After the assault on Holly Grove, she and a group of women vandalized the railroad tracks to prevent further attacks. They also confronted guards, risked arrest, and testified to how the guards disrupted their daily lives. The miners ultimately won a precarious victory, in part because the women cared, and they did so radically. Their actions underscored that the strike and the class struggle it represented was not merely about the mines, but also about the question of how life was to be lived. Thank you.